2007, and I got my own trailer in 2009. So I work as an independent contractor for a company called Landstar, and I keep pretty much all the money except the 30, what is it, 73, so except the 27% that goes to the company and the agencies. This is the best deal you can get without getting your own authority and, you know, becoming totally independent, which I don't want to do because there's too much paperwork. And I like my job, and I'm trucking, you know, pretty much day in, day out. The job involves long hours. See, right now, for example, I'm trucking along I-95 in Maine. And what I love about this job is that, you know, you're not stuck in one place, like in one office from 8 to 5. You know, your office is always moving, and you get to see some beautiful scenery, and it's just unbelievable. You know, I would never have been able to see stuff that I see in this job if I wasn't a long-haul trucker. So I love it, but it all boils down to money, right? And the more I'm trucking, the more I get convinced that the best money is not made behind the wheel of a truck in this industry, but behind a desk with a phone and a computer and an internet connection. And what I'm talking about is the job of a freight broker or freight agent. And a lot of people hate them, but the reality is that you cannot get rid of them. And just to give you an example, I'm gonna tell you about my recent load. So first of all, I'm from Ontario, Canada, right? And I found a load in northern Ontario, basically just west of our capital, Ottawa. And for me to drive there, I had to cover 337 miles, you know, deadhead. Now I'm paying all my expenses. I pay for fuel, I pay for repairs, you know, I pay insurance and licensing and stuff like that. So this all comes out of my own pocket. So 337 miles. Then I got loaded there, and it took a whole day to get loaded because the guys there were like, I don't know, they were just taking their time and they didn't have the correct equipment. And basically I picked up a few utility trailers, and they were not heavy, but they were very awkward to load, and you needed there was snow everywhere. So anyway, it took a whole day, right? So now I'm losing a whole day. So I picked up those trailers and I went 803 miles into Virginia, right? So why I agreed to this load is because it paid very well. If you translate, you know, like miles into dollars, it was over $3 per mile, which is excellent. And plus, it didn't require topping. And I hate topping, you know, covering the load with tops. But anyway, so in trucking, at least at Landstar, the rate always includes two parts. There's the so-called line haul, or whatever the customer pays for to move the freight, line haul, and then there's fuel surcharge. You know, ever since the fuel prices increased, when it was like a few years ago, right, when they just spiked and became really high, all shippers now are basically required by the market to pay this surcharge, which basically the purpose is to offset the high cost of fuel. And when you own your own equipment, like I do, like the truck and trailer, you keep all that fuel surcharge, or FSC for short. So this load also has this FSC, sorry, of course, and usually the way they calculate this, it's so many cents per mile, and it's based on the fuel price index published by the government somewhere in some top secret newsletter. I don't know where it is, but basically it's kind of subjective. You cannot change it yourself. But let's say for this load, my fuel surcharge was $856, and the line haul was $3,057, and I get to keep the entire fuel surcharge, and I get to keep 73% of the line haul, or $3,057, right? So what I get here I get $2,232 plus $856, so I get 100% of the fuel surcharge. Well, my total income for this trip, and it almost took a week because I wanted to leave on Monday, but they couldn't load me on Monday, so I left on Tuesday. I drove that 337 miles, and I started loading Wednesday and lost whole Wednesday. So basically, by the time I got emptied, it was Friday, so whole week. So whole week of work, I got $3,088, and that seems like a lot of money, but don't forget that I paid around $739 for fuel, and then each paycheck that I receive from Landstar, they deduct licensing, insurance, and stuff like that. So that another $200 a week, right? So basically, I lost roughly $939. So after all these deductions, my income for the week was $2,149. And don't forget that there's tickets and there's repairs, right? And just as an example, when I was crossing into U.S., so this load was from Canada, right? I was crossing into U.S. and there was a DOT officer and he inspected my truck, and normally that's what happens because, you know, new trucks are extremely expensive, right? To get a brand new truck, it's like $120,000, $130,000, and of course it's all financed, but then you know, the payments will be like $2,500 a month for 5 years. So unless you want to go broke, you know, you keep your old truck as long as possible, and that's when you run into problems like I did at the border. So the DOT guy inspects my truck, and whenever you are stopped by DOT, they always find something. You know, even with a new truck, they can always find something because this is his job or her job, and they know what they're doing. So, you know, normally they specialize in one particular thing that they check on each truck. Like this guy gave me a ticket for my ABS light on the dashboard not working. Like, as far as I'm concerned, my ABS system works on the truck and trailer, but the diagnostic lamp that's supposed to light up for 3 seconds when you turn the key to start the engine, that lamp did not work, so he gave me a ticket. So now I go to the repair shop, and I thought it was just some kind of disconnected wires or the fuse, and the first shop charged me $200. The second shop charged me $900, and they still couldn't fix this problem, but they charged so much because I found that my shocks were all gone, so I had to replace 3 shocks. But anyway, so I already spent $1,000, and I still haven't fixed the problem because they are saying that I need the new computer chip for this stupid ABS system, and that ECU for the ABS costs $970 plus installation, right? That's just to give you an idea of how huge the cost can be for the on-the-road trucker. And it doesn't happen every month, but it does happen. Like even flat tire, you know, $100, $200. Like repairs are very expensive on the truck. So what I'm trying to say is that even though initially the line haul and the fuel surcharge I was getting for this load are quite high, or were quite high, in the end I barely make you know, just a living, you know, and that's why the goal of this video is to tell you about the job of a freight broker, the person who has 0 fuel bills, 0 repair bills, and basically keeps all the money. Now let's see what other parties also make money from this transaction. Like, evidently I'm the key player here, right? Because I was loading and securing and moving these trailers and burning fuel and stuff like that. But first of all, there was the shipper. This was an army base in northern Ontario. They didn't know what they were doing totally, since I spent a whole day there. And I didn't even get paid for that whole day. Then there was the consignee, and that would be the ideal situation. Oh, and then also there was the agent. And just to, on a quick side note, Landstar is kind of unusual in this regard. Landstar, the trucking company, that we don't have dispatch. What we do have, we have 2 types of contractors. We have drivers with their own trucks. We don't have any company drivers. So each driver at least owns his or her truck. And a lot of people also own their own trailers, like I do. So if you have a truck, they pay you 64% of the line haul plus fuel surcharge. If you get your trailer, you also get an extra 8%. So 64 plus 8, what is it, 72? But then I think they give you 1 more percent after the first, I think it's 60 days. So anyway, I know that I'm getting 73%. But basically, the way it works is I have to find the load on our load board on the website, and I work with our agents. And an agent is basically the same as a freight broker. The only thing is they are called agents because they represent only Landstar and they only work with our drivers, right? That's why they're called agents. It's kind of like the same as insurance field, where if you're an insurance broker, you work with everybody, but if you're an insurance agent, usually you represent only one insurance company. So the same thing here. But what's important for our discussion is that the agent is paid by Landstar for the same load. Like I get my cut, the $3,088, right, for this load, but the agent gets, or actually the agency that the agent owns, and why that clarification is important, I'll say in a second, but the agency gets 5% of the line haul. So roughly $3,057, 5% of that is, let's say, $150. So not a lot of money. Especially if you think that most agents don't work by themselves. What they do, they hire salespeople to work for them. So the agency gets 5%, but then the agent, like the key player, the owner of the agency, pays his or her salespeople just maybe, I don't know, 30–40% of that. So it's not a lot of money, and that's why a lot of loads are screwed up, because agents, it's hard to care for something when you're only getting $150, and even not that, when you're just a salesperson. That's why we get lots of screw-ups, like this current load I'm doing, right? The agent said the shipper wanted a 53-foot trailer. I go there's like 8 boxes, so the regular 48-foot flatbed would do, so they never know the weight, they never know the correct dimensions. It's just the compensation for them is not good. And that's why lots of people in this industry actually become independent, and they become brokers. So let's say the same agent with Landstar who wants to make more money, what they do is they quit Landstar, and then they get their own license, and they become fully vested freight brokers, so they can work with everybody. And then, of course, if you're the broker, you keep more money out of that line haul. And the way it works is that actually, first of all, agents at Landstar, how do they find loads? Well, in the ideal world, they would just go ahead and knock on doors. Let's say if they live somewhere, let's say in Boston, Massachusetts, right? They would go around their neighborhood and find every shipper at every plant and factory and big company which might need the trucking service, and they would leave their cards, their flyers, and they would urge people to call them. And that would give them a direct contract with the shipper. And that's where normally you get the best rates, where the agent has the direct contract. So there's no more middlemen or middlewomen involved, right? But the reality is that agents, since they make only so much money from each load, they don't want to go out there, when it's cold and raining, or it's too hot. They like sitting in the office with the air conditioning on and coffee machine purring in the corner. So what they do, they find loads through freight brokers, like those guys that I just mentioned before, those guys that make more money. And the way it works is that, in the simplest sense, this trucking thing only needs 2 players. You need the shipper, a company that needs something to be trucked on a truck, and you have a trucker. Let's say a guy like me who might be, let's say, independent, has his own license and authority, so he doesn't need any brokers. He just has a direct contract with the shipper, and he moves his loads. But the problem is that sooner or later, the shipper gets so big that he or she needs more trucks per day, and then this simple one-truck company cannot satisfy the shipper's needs, right? So the shipper can start calling the trucking companies in his area, and maybe then he has a contract with, let's say, 3 or 4 companies, but sooner or later that's not enough either. So now the shipper can't just sit on the phone all day long and call all these trucking companies. So it's much easier for the shipper to just call one freight broker. You know, like, let's say he knows this guy Steve, who's a big expert in trucking, and he has contacts in like hundreds and thousands of trucking companies because he subscribes to this load board, you know, independent load board where people post loads and trucks. Like brokers and shippers post loads, truckers and trucking companies post available trucks. So what this shipper realizes is that it's much easier for him to call this guy Steve and let Steve handle all the details. So Steve makes $1 million a year because he doesn't burn any fuel. He doesn't have to repair his own trucks. He has no employees. Maybe he has a pretty girl, Kate, working the phones, and it's just him and the Kate, and they just have a couple of bills like phone lines and internet and stuff like that. But of course, you need insurance. When you are a freight broker, you have to follow your state or province regulations, and I think you need to have a bond for like $10,000, but of course it doesn't cost $10,000 to get that, but each jurisdiction is different. For example, I know that in Ontario, Canada, where I live, freight brokers don't even have to have a license. There's no law for them to have a license. All they have to do is just basically, hang out the shingle and tell everybody that you are a freight broker and print out business cards, and there you go, you're in business. All you need is maybe a subscription to a good load board like internettruckstop.com or getloaded.com or stuff like that, and that's it. And especially if you have 1 or 2 direct shippers in your area, maybe it's not that difficult to find, and that's how you make money. But the way it works actually, like how do brokers get paid? Why do they make a lot of money? Is because instead of getting paid by the shipper, what they do is they discount the freight, and the same freight that they get from the shipper, let's say at $3,900, they don't pay that to the agent. They post this load on the load board at a lower rate. At the lowest rate they think someone might buy it and get it, right? And then they just keep the difference, So, and why I started all this rant is because sometimes the brokers get sloppy and they forget to erase the cost of the freight that they were paid. And I noticed this a couple of times in my paperwork, like when the shipper gives out the paperwork to the driver, sometimes they indicate the entire amount that the trucking cost them, and now we're getting back to the same load I did from Ontario to Virginia, right? So the load that was the freight rate was posted on our load board, and the one I got was $3,900, right? So $3,057 for the line haul, for the actual freight, and $856 for the fuel. So that was $3,900, and I got 73% of the line haul plus the fuel surcharge. And the agent, like I mentioned, got 5%, right? Now I'm looking at the field on the shipping invoice or bill of lading where it says freight cost, and the number there somehow is higher than what I was told by the agent. Like the actual number was $4,470, right? So the broker kept $570 for himself. And the way it works is a lot of these guys, the brokers, they are independent, but also a lot of trucking companies, on top of their regular trucking license, they also get the broker license. And what they're hoping to do is that sometimes they have too much freight and not enough trucks. So instead of moving the load themselves, they just post it on the load board, and they discount the freight, like in this case, and they get to keep, let's say, $500-600 from each load. So no fuel bill, no repair bills, no employees, are required actually. So and that's why I'm saying that this is the best job in the trucking industry, and that's what I'm thinking of getting into myself. It's just that, of course, now I'm stuck with the contract with the leasing for the trailer. My truck is already paid off, but if I didn't have the leasing contract for the trailer that I cannot cancel, I'd probably just go to, there's a whole bunch of freight broker schools around. You can get a couple of courses on the internet, or just, I know there's a guy in Arizona that does a very good job training people. He's a freight broker himself, and I think it costs anywhere from $1,000 to, I don't know, $2,000-3,000. But you pay it once, and then you get your license, you get your insurance, and that's it. And probably the best way to start this is to work as an agent or a salesperson for another broker, until you get experience, and then you can open your own company, and maybe hire a receptionist, someone to answer the phones, or maybe even a salesperson. But the beauty of this business is that you're not tied up to one location. You can work from anywhere where you have a phone and a computer with internet connection, because all you do is you find loads, you post them on the load board cheaper than you got them at, and that's it. You don't need trucks, you don't need fuel, you don't need repairs. So that's the best business, and that's how you can make a $1 million in trucking without having to actually drive a single mile. This was Sergey Drachev, and thanks for watching this Tips for Truckers movie. Stay tuned for more.